I was on my knees in the garage, sliding the last box of Christmas decorations onto the shelf when my phone buzzed on the concrete floor beside me. It was a text from my daughter. "Mom, I told everyone Christmas is at your place this year. 22 people. I already bought the ham. You're going to love it." I read it 3 times. Not because I didn't understand it. I understood it perfectly. I read it 3 times because I was trying to locate somewhere inside myself the version of me that would have just said, "Okay, honey," and started pulling that box back down. I couldn't find her. I typed back, "That sounds like a lovely party. You should host it at your house. I'll be in Flagstaff with Aunt Vera until the 27th. I set the phone down, finished with the box, and went inside to make coffee. The call came 40 minutes later. "My name is Irene. I'm 68 years old. I live in a 3-bedroom house in Tucson that I have owned outright since 2019, when I paid off the last of the mortgage with money I earned running a small but steady bookkeeping firm for 26 years. I mention that not to brag. I mention it because it becomes relevant later in a way I did not see coming. My daughter is 41. Her name is Faye. She married a man named Colt 7 years ago, and I want to be fair about Colt. He's not a bad person. He just has never once in 7 years said no to Faye, and so neither of them has much practice receiving the word from anyone else. They live 20 minutes from me. I have a key to their house. They have a key to mine. That felt, for a long time, like closeness. I'm not sure I'd describe it that way anymore. I have a son too, older than Faye by 4 years. His name is Walt. He lives in Portland with his husband, and he calls me every Sunday at 7, which is something I relied on more than I ever told him. Walt knew what his sister was like. He was the one who, years ago, said to me, "Mom, the problem isn't that Faye's selfish. The problem is that you've made it very comfortable to be." I didn't want to hear that at the time. I do now. The Christmases. Let me tell you about the Christmases. For as long as my kids were alive, Christmas was mine. I don't mean I owned it. I mean I built it, every year, from the ground up, because I loved it, and because no one else was going to. Their father left when Faye was 3 and Walt was 7, and after that it was just the 3 of us. And I decided that if the holidays were going to feel like anything at all, they were going to feel like something. I made the wassail from scratch. I made my mother's rum cake, which takes 2 days. I strung lights on the eaves myself, standing on a ladder in November with frozen fingers, because that's what you do when you want your children to remember that home was a good place to come back to. And they did come back, every year. Then they started bringing people, which I loved. Friends, then partners, then Faye's in-laws, then their neighbors, then colleagues. 22 people this year, apparently. I didn't even know all their names. At some point, without my quite noticing, I had stopped being the person who threw a party because I wanted to and become the person who was expected to throw a party because that's what I did. That's what I was for. Faye called at 2:15. I let it ring twice and then I picked up. "Mom, why are you going to Flagstaff?" "Because Vera invited me," I said, "and I haven't seen her since her hip surgery." "You can see Vera in January. I can see Vera whenever I want to, sweetheart. She's my sister." There was a silence on her end that I recognized. It was the silence she used when she was deciding whether to push harder or try a different angle. She tried the angle. Everyone is already expecting it. I told Colt's parents. I told the Hendersons. I told Faye. I kept my voice gentle. "You told people before you asked me. I didn't think you'd have a problem with it. You didn't think about it at all," I said. "That's different." Another silence. "So you're seriously not doing Christmas?" "I'm seriously to Flagstaff." She hung up before I could say anything else. What happened in the next 72 hours was something I can only describe as a coordinated inconvenience. Colt called and said they were worried about me. That was the word he used, worried. He said I'd seemed off lately, a little forgetful, maybe overwhelmed. He said they just wanted to make sure I had support. I sat with that for a moment and then I said, "Colt, I appreciate that. I'm fine. Enjoy your holiday." My cousin on Faye's invitation list called to tell me she'd already bought a plane ticket from Cleveland. I told her I was sorry, that Faye had made plans without checking with me first, and that I hoped they could host her. There was a very long pause, and then she said she'd work it out. Faye's mother-in-law, a woman named Diane who I genuinely like and who has always been kind to me, texted to ask if there was anything she could bring. I called her directly and explained the situation as simply as I could. She said, "Oh, Irene, I'm sorry. I'll talk to Faye." I didn't know what she said to her, but Faye didn't call that day. On the third day, my son called. Not on Sunday. On a Wednesday. "What's happening down there?" he said. "Your sister planned a Christmas party at my house without asking me. And you said no." I said no. He was quiet for a second. Then he said, "Good. I want to stop here and be honest about something." I almost said yes. Not when Faye texted. Not even when she called. But around day 2, when the messages were stacking up and I could feel the pressure of everyone's plans pressing against me, some old part of me started doing the math. It would only be one day. I knew where everything was. I could do it in my sleep. That's exactly the problem. I could do it in my sleep, so it would never occur to anyone to ask if I wanted to. I made a cup of chamomile tea, sat down at my kitchen table, and I thought about what I actually wanted out of the next 30 years. Not what was expected of me, not what would keep the peace, what I wanted. I wanted to see Vera. I hadn't been to Flagstaff in almost 2 years. I wanted to sleep in her guest room and eat her green chile eggs and walk around in my socks and not produce anything for anyone. I wanted one Christmas that felt like rest. I booked my hotel room. Vera lives in a small place. Her guest bed is a fold-out. I decided on the hotel this time, and I left for Flagstaff on the 22nd. I was on the highway, windows down, radio on, when my phone rang through the car speakers. "Faye again." I answered it. "Where are you?" "About 40 minutes out of Tucson." "You actually left." "I told you I was leaving." Her voice shifted then. It went from frustrated to something more careful. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something. It's about the house." I turned the radio down. "Colt and I have been looking at properties," she said. "The market is insane. We found something we really love, but we're short on the down payment. We were thinking, if you could put the house up as collateral, or maybe do a gift of equity against it." Our financial advisor said it was possible. I pulled off at a rest stop. Just eased off the ramp and put the car in park and sat there in the sun with the engine running. "Your financial advisor," I said slowly. "He says it's done all the time. Parents help kids buy houses." "Faye," I kept my voice very even. "Were you going to mention this at Christmas? Is that what this was?" Silence. Were the 22 people coming to my house somehow part of persuading me to sign something? "That's not." "Mom, you're being paranoid. I'm asking you a direct question." She didn't answer the question. She said they just needed a little help, that it wasn't a big deal, that I had equity I wasn't using, that the house would eventually be hers anyway. "It won't," I said. She stopped. "The house won't eventually be yours," I said. "I updated my estate documents in March. The house goes into a revocable trust when I pass. Walt gets half. You get half. But neither of you gets it early, and neither of you gets to use it as leverage on a mortgage you can't qualify for on your own." The silence this time was different, longer. You already did that? In March. You never told me." "It wasn't a discussion," I said. "It's my house. It was my decision to make." I could hear her breathing. Then, quietly, "Colt's parents were going to match the gift amount. We had it all planned out." And there it was. Not a surprise, but still, when I heard it, all of it planned, all of it arranged, all 22 people, and the ham she'd already bought, and the pressure campaign that began the moment I said no. I felt something settle into place in my chest. Not anger, something quieter than anger. Clarity. I want to tell you about the drive to Flagstaff, because it was one of the better hours of my year. There's a stretch of I-17 between Phoenix and the plateau where the desert just opens up. The saguaros thin out, the elevation climbs, the sky gets this deep, late afternoon blue that doesn't exist anywhere else I've been. I've driven that road probably 40 times in my life, and I've mostly driven it thinking about where I was going and what I needed to do when I got there. That day, I just drove it. Vera had a fire going when I arrived. She met me at the door in her slippers and handed me a mug of something hot before I even had my coat off, and she didn't ask me anything for the first 20 minutes. which is one of the reasons I love her. Some people know when you need to just sit. I told her everything eventually, over the course of that first evening. She listened without interrupting, which is a skill not everyone has. At the end, she said, "Do you feel guilty?" "I thought about that. A little," I said, "but not about Flagstaff. I feel guilty that it took me this long." She nodded, like she understood that. She probably did. Walt came down on the 26th. Just drove down from the airport in a rental car, showed up with a bottle of wine and a bag of groceries, and the three of us had our own version of Christmas in Vera's little living room, with the fire going, and nobody expected to be anywhere or produce anything. It was the best Christmas I'd had in years. I'm not sure I'd have said that out loud a year ago. But it's true. Faye and I didn't speak for 3 weeks after that conversation on the highway. She reached out in January. A text, not a call, which told me she was still working out how to do it. It said, "I handled this badly. I'm sorry about Christmas. Can we talk?" I waited a day and then I called her. We talked for almost an hour, she cried, which I expected. I didn't, which surprised me. I thought I would, but I had done most of the feeling in the weeks before, quietly, privately, in the way I've always done it. She said she'd been stressed about money and she'd convinced herself it wasn't a big deal to ask. I said I understood that, and I did. I also told her that the way she'd asked, the way she'd created a situation designed to make it hard for me to say no, wasn't something I was going to let go unacknowledged. She was quiet for a long time after that. "I didn't think of it that way," she finally said. "I know," I said. "That's what I want you to think about. We didn't resolve everything that day. I'm not sure you do with a thing like that. What we did was agree to be honest with each other in ways we hadn't been before. Whether that holds, I don't know. But it felt like an actual beginning instead of a patched-over surface." Colt's parents ended up helping them with the down payment on their own. They found a townhouse in April. It's smaller than what they were looking at before, but it's theirs, in the way that things should be yours. Because you figured it out, not because someone handed it over. There's something I keep coming back to when I think about all of this. I spent a long time believing that the best thing I could do for my children was make things easy, clear the path, show up, absorb the inconvenience so they didn't have to feel it. I thought that was love, and in some form it was. But somewhere along the way, it became something else. It became a system, and systems, once in place, are hard to interrupt without somebody getting upset. The interruption is the point. When I said no to Christmas, I wasn't punishing Faye. I wasn't making a statement. I was doing what I should have been doing for years, which was telling the truth about what I wanted. The fact that it shocked her, the fact that it took her weeks to absorb, doesn't make me the villain of that story. It just means we both had some catching up to do. I am 68 years old. I have, if I'm lucky and take care of myself, another 20 or 25 years. I intend to spend them being useful when I want to be, resting when I need to, and driving to Flagstaff whenever Vera asks me to. My house is mine. My time is mine. My holidays are mine. I didn't take those things back. I just stopped giving them away. The 22nd of December this year, I got out the ladder. Put up the lights on the eaves, same as always, alone in the cold. But I was doing it because I wanted to, because I still love the way this house looks in December. Because some traditions are yours, and not just obligations you inherited from your own need to keep everyone comfortable. I made the rum cake too. It still takes 2 days. I brought half of it to Vera's when she drove down to Tucson for New Year's, and we ate it at my kitchen table with bad television on in the background and her dog asleep on my foot. Walt called on Sunday at 7, same as always. I told him it had been a good year. He laughed and said, "That's new." It was.